It is late afternoon on March 4th, 2022, on the Thai island of Koh Samui. Inside a luxury villa, the most famous spin bowler Australia has ever produced is doing something incredibly ordinary. Watching cricket on television, chatting with friends, talking about food and massages, and the next day. Shane Warne is 52, on holiday, laughing, making plans. Outside, the ocean is calm. Inside, the air conditioning hums, the lights are soft, and nothing in the room suggests that this will be the last day of his life. A few hours later, he will be lying on the floor of that same villa, unresponsive, as his friends fight to bring him back and paramedics work on him for more than 40 minutes. Official reports will tell the world he died of natural causes, a heart that finally had enough after years of damage. But if it was that simple, why are there so many unanswered questions about what was found and not found in that room? Why did a nation that worshipped Shane Warne as a sporting god learn years later about medications by his bed and claims that one bottle was removed before photographs were taken? And how does a man who defined the Australian idea of sporting brilliance end up dying alone in a foreign villa, far from the roar of the crowds that once carried his name? This is not a biography of Shane Warne. This is a rewind. We are going to step into that villa in Thailand, slow those last 24 hours down almost frame by frame, and then pull back through the weeks, years, and decades that pushed him there. The glory, the scandals, the warnings he ignored, the pressure to stay larger than life, even as his body was breaking. Then we will come back to that room, those pills, that official report, and the people now saying the full story of his death has never really been laid out. The news of his death breaks the way news travels now, in fragments. A tweet from a cricket journalist, a push notification on a phone in Melbourne, a red banner on a news channel. At first, people think it must be a mistake. Shane Warne, dead, age 52, suspected heart attack in Thailand. It doesn't make sense. Shane Warne is one of those names that feels too big to sit comfortably next to the word dead. Fans refresh pages, check sources, search for a hoax. Then the confirmations start to stack up, and the disbelief turns into a heavy silence. Across Australia, the same scene repeats. In offices, in pubs, at backyard barbecues, someone looks down at their phone and suddenly goes quiet. Then comes the sentence that has become a reflex when a legend dies too young. He was only 52. That number hangs there, small and unfair, next to the scale of the man. Television networks clear their schedules. Old footage rolls. The ball of the century to Mike Gatting. The hat tricks. The celebrations with arms spread wide and blonde hair flying. The impossible comebacks that seemed to start every time the ball was tossed into his hand. Men who shared dressing rooms with him sit in studios trying not to break down on live television. They were prepared to talk about his tactics, his genius, his complicated personal life. They weren't prepared to talk about him dying on a holiday bed in Thailand. At the Melbourne cricket ground, the arena most associated with his genius, flowers and handwritten notes pile up against the gates. Someone leaves a cricket ball with a message in permanent marker. Someone else leaves a pie and a cigarette. A dark little joke in the middle of deep sadness. Because that is how Australians often grieve, with a laugh that almost cracks. The state government announces a public memorial. Later, the Great Southern Stand will be renamed the Shane Warne Stand, making permanent what his bowling had already written into the concrete of the ground. Running underneath this wave of grief is a need to understand. The first official line is simple and soothing. Natural causes. A heart attack linked to pre-existing heart disease. No suspicious circumstances. It fits the narrative people have been telling themselves for years. He smoked. He lived hard. He traveled constantly. He had spoken before about chest pains and breathing issues, shrugged off like so many other stories in the long list of Warne being Warne. Maybe it was always going to end this way, some say. Maybe he just ran out of luck. But even in those first days, there are details that don't sit neatly. Reports mention a liquid-only diet he had been on before the trip. Friends talking about him trying to lose weight fast. Experts warning that rapid transformations at that age are risky. Doctors appear on television pointing out that heart disease comes quietly until it doesn't. That the kind of lifestyle Warne lived leaves marks that don't always show on camera. Clips surface of Warne talking about previous health scares, half laughing them off with that cheeky grin the public loves. In hindsight, some of those moments feel much less funny. To understand why this shocks Australia so deeply, you have to understand what Shane Warne was long before he died in that villa. He grows up in suburban Melbourne, a stocky kid who loves footy as much as cricket, more bloke down the street than born superstar. What sets him apart isn't his physique. It's what he can make a cricket ball do. While the world is obsessed with fast bowlers, Warne teaches himself leg spin, the subtle, difficult craft that makes the ball dip, drift, and explode sideways at the last second. In the early 1990s, he forces his way into the Australian Test side and begins bending matches to his will. In 1993, he bowls the delivery that will be called the ball of the century, a leg break to England's Mike Gatting that seems to break the laws of physics. Overnight, he stops being just a gifted cricketer and becomes a symbol. His face is on posters and pub walls. Kids in backyards try to copy his grip, his action, his swagger. With that comes something no one can coach you for: the weight of being Shane Warne. Every part of him is suddenly public property. His hair, his weight, his nights out, his cigarettes, his love life. On the field, he's expected to deliver miracles every time he touches the ball. Off it, he is expected to live up to the lovable rogue image, the hard-drinking, hard-laughing larrikin who loves a punt and still turns up to win the match. For a while, he leans into it. Gambling, smoking, junk food, tabloid headlines, they all become part of the brand. The cracks appear early. In the mid-1990s, it emerges that he and teammate Mark Waugh accepted money from an Indian bookmaker for pitch and weather information. It isn't match-fixing, but it crosses a line, and the fact that Cricket Australia kept it quiet for years becomes its own scandal. Warne is fined and embarrassed. He learns how quickly adoration can curdle into suspicion, how fragile the halo really is. In 2003, on the eve of a World Cup, he is sent home after testing positive for a banned diuretic. He says it was a pill he took on his mother's advice to look slimmer on television. Whatever the intent, the result is a 1-year ban. The headlines are brutal. The drug cheat, the fallen hero. Suddenly, the magician is off the field, his reputation in ruins, with a full year to sit with the consequences. What he does with that year says a lot about him. He doesn't disappear. He trains. He obsesses. When he returns, he bowls some of the best spells of his life, almost single-handedly keeping Australia alive in an Ashes series. The public narrative shifts again. He becomes the flawed genius who refuses to stay down, the comeback king. But his off-field life continues to spiral. His marriage collapses under the weight of affairs and leaked messages. Tabloids feast on his private life, framing him as both seducer and fool. Paparazzi catch him drinking and smoking after he promises to live healthier. Every ordinary mistake of a man in his 30s and 40s is magnified by the fact that he is Shane Warne, and people feel entitled to watch him stumble. Over time, his identity hardens into a paradox. He is both a cricketing elder statesman and a permanent boy man, the charismatic bad boy who never quite grows up. He moves into commentary and T20 leagues, into endorsements and poker tournaments, into being a television personality as much as a sportsman. He talks openly and often humorously about his flaws. What he doesn't do, at least not consistently, is live as if the warnings about his health truly apply to him. Years of smoking, poor diet, stress, long-haul travel, and dramatic weight swings add up. He has known heart issues. He gets COVID and later admits it hit him hard. He talks about the need to get serious about his body. Then life speeds up again. In photos, his appearance yo-yos, sometimes lean and glowing, sometimes puffy and exhausted. Each new set of unflattering shots is followed by another promise to get back in shape, another extreme effort to fix in weeks what took years to build. That is the context for his final months. In the lead-up to Thailand, he embarks on what people close to him describe as an extreme, mostly liquid diet to lose weight quickly. Juices, soups, shakes, the kind of regimen that produces dramatic before and after photos, without necessarily fixing what is happening in his arteries. The cameras and the public applaud the transformation. The heart inside his chest has to deal with the sudden change. Exhausted and wanting a reset, he books a trip with friends to Koh Samui. The island is known for its beaches and detox retreats, a place where wealthy tourists go to cleanse, relax, disappear for a while. To Warne, it looks like a chance to step out of the spotlight, sit by a pool, watch cricket, get massages, and convince himself and others that he is finally making his health a priority. The bitter irony is that his version of a health kick still includes behaviors that put enormous pressure on a damaged cardiovascular system. When he arrives at the villa complex, staff and guests see the version of Shane Warne the public knows. Smiling, posing for photos, joking. He talks about using the trip as a reset. He is not shuffling around like a man who feels close to the end. He is planning, laughing, living. The days in Koh Samui fall into an easy pattern. Swimming, watching cricket, ordering food, arranging massages. From the outside, if you didn't know what was coming, it looks like a man finally taking a breath. Underneath, the risk is building. Later reports from paramedics and leaked medical notes will mention medications by his bed. Viagra, Kamagra, another drug related to sexual performance. For a 52-year-old man with narrowed coronary arteries, these aren't harmless. They can raise heart rate and blood pressure, strain a heart already under duress from rapid weight loss and years of abuse. In interviews, friends will mention he had complained of chest pain and breathlessness in the past. On this trip, any fatigue can be dismissed as travel and detox. On the last day of his life, he wakes in that villa with the ceiling fan turning slowly above him, the air thick with tropical heat outside and artificially cool inside. Somewhere far away, in suburbs across Australia, people go about their routines assuming that if they want to hear from Shane Warne, he will be in a commentary box or a studio whenever the next big match comes along. In their minds, he is permanent. In his own mind, he is on a midlife health kick. In reality, his heart is dangerously fragile. The day moves like any other. He watches cricket. He chats with his friend and colleague Andrew Neophytou, who is working on a documentary about his life. 2 massage therapists arrive at the villa and then leave again, captured on security cameras that will later be replayed on news bulletins. There is talk of meeting up at around 5 in the afternoon. Nothing feels dramatic. When 5 o'clock comes and Warne doesn't appear, Neophytou notices. For a man whose presence usually fills whatever space he's in, the absence feels wrong. He walks to Warne's room and knocks. No answer. He opens the door. The shock is immediate and physical. Warne is lying unresponsive. This is not a man napping. Something in the color of his face, the stillness of his chest, the way his body is positioned on the floor, shouts that something is terribly wrong. Neophytou calls out. Friends rush in. The villa, built for relaxation, becomes an emergency ward. Someone calls the resort staff. An ambulance is summoned. On the phone, they have to piece together a sentence that shouldn't exist. Legendary Australian cricketer, cardiac arrest, Thai villa. Hurry. While they wait, they start CPR. Compressions, breaths, the rhythm of hope. They keep going because the alternative, stopping, is unthinkable. When paramedics arrive, they take over. They continue efforts for more than 40 minutes. It is a long time to fight a silent heart. The equipment beeps. Compressions continue. The villa's calm surfaces are now backdrops for a scene of desperation. Eventually, Warne is moved into an ambulance and taken to hospital. Sirens cut through the humid air. People on the roadside see the vehicle flash past without knowing who is inside. At the hospital, doctors do what they can. At some point, despite all efforts, the line is crossed. His heart will not sustain a rhythm. The man on the table is pronounced dead. A time is written down. A file is opened. A name familiar to millions is typed under the heading "Deceased." The autopsy ordered by Thai authorities concludes that he died from coronary artery atherosclerosis, severe narrowing of the heart's arteries, leading to a fatal heart attack. No signs of foul play. No evidence of an assault. Natural causes. The phrase is repeated by officials in Thailand and by authorities in Australia. It becomes the official ending to his story. But deep in the medical notes, paramedics record what they saw in the room. Multiple medications associated with sexual performance. Later, a Thai officer will claim he was instructed to remove a bottle of Camagra before official photographs were taken, to avoid the appearance of scandal. Police insist there were no illegal drugs at the scene. Both things can be true at once. No illegal narcotics, but substances that complicate the image of a simple, blameless death. For some, any mention of these details feels like an attempt to smear a dead man. For others, ignoring them feels like another way of sanitizing a life that was always messy and human. The biology is clear enough. Years of smoking, stress, poor diet, rapid weight loss, and underlying heart disease created the conditions for a catastrophic cardiac event. Add in medications that strain the cardiovascular system, and the risk spikes. Whether or not a bottle was removed, the damage in his arteries was there long before he booked that villa. Back in Australia, the country grieves and mythologizes at the same time. The state memorial at the MCG draws celebrities, politicians, former teammates, and ordinary fans. Warne's children speak about their father on the turf, where he created so many of his greatest moments. The stand is renamed in his honor. Commentators and ex-players frame him as one of the greatest to ever play the game, maybe the greatest spin bowler of all time. In the same breath, some acknowledge his chaos, his flaws, his tendency to live as if rules and consequences were for other people. As more details emerge, his death becomes not just a cricket story, but a public health parable. Doctors use his case to talk about heart disease in middle-aged men, about the danger of ignoring chest pain and family history, about the illusion of invincibility that clings to famous and ordinary men alike. His family takes part in campaigns about getting checked, about taking care of yourself before it's too late. They have to balance deep, private grief with the knowledge that his lifestyle played a role in their loss. For fans, holding the whole picture is difficult. On one side, the memory of the magician, the loops and dips, the late turn, the triumphant roar, the feeling that when Warne had the ball, anything could happen. On the other, the image of him lying on a villa floor, unresponsive, surrounded by the residue of choices his heart could no longer absorb. Those two images do not sit easily together. Yet that tension is exactly where the truth lies. The question, what really happened in Shane Warne's final hours, doesn't lead to a conspiracy. It leads to something less cinematic and more confronting. He died of a massive heart attack in a body that had been warning him for years. Those final hours were not scripted revenge or mystery, but the predictable, preventable endpoint of a pattern. The potential cover-up is not about who killed him, but about how much of that reality people in power thought the public should see. In that sense, his last moments are bigger than one man. They reflect the way we build our heroes and the way we let them destroy themselves in plain sight. Warne was rewarded for decades for being larger than life. Sponsors, broadcasters, fans, all loved the risk-taking, boundary-pushing version of him. Dialing that down, becoming just another cautious man in his 50s, would have felt like betrayal of the persona everyone expected, including himself. What remains after the arguments and the leaks and the analysis is a strange combination of awe and sorrow. Awe at what he did with a cricket ball, how he changed the sport and inspired generations. Sorrow at how he treated his own body, how deeply he believed he could always pull off one more escape. His final hours in that villa are not separate from his legend. They are the last chapter of it. Somewhere between the roar of a packed MCG and the low hum of an air conditioner in a Thai bedroom, Shane Warne's story reached its final over. There was no miracle ball this time, no last-minute twist to turn the result around. Just a man, a heart with limits, and a line he never saw coming. The rest is up to those who watched him play and those who only knew his name. To remember him honestly, to learn from the way he lived and the way he died, and to decide how we want our own final hours to be written.